The night cycle on Station Horizon 7 was always the quietest time. The lights dimmed to a soft blue. The busy sounds of thousands of refugees faded to whispers. Most species on the station slept during these hours, but not. She walked the empty corridor toward the Cubs' dormitory with silent steps. Her boots made no sound on the metal floor. This was habit. On Earth, in the Marines, she learned that quiet feet meant living feet. Some lessons never left the body. The dormitory door slid open. Inside, four small shapes were curled together in a pile of blankets and soft cushions. The cubs looked like fox kits from Earth, but their fur was silver blue and their eyes, when open, glowed soft gold. They were refugees, orphans. The raiders had destroyed their and killed their parents. Now they lived here in this cold metal station far from any sun they knew. Checked the room the way she always did. Windows sealed, vents secure, emergency exit clear. Only then did she sit in her chair by the door and watch the cubs sleep. Was the biggest. He slept on the outside of the pile, his small body curved around the others. Even in sleep he tried to protect them, like that about him. Was the smallest, buried deep in the middle where it was warmest and safest. Bren slept with his ears twitching, always half listening, always curious about every sound, and slept perfectly still, conserving energy, efficient even in rest. They were good cubs, strong cubs. They deserved better than this cold station and the nightmares that made them cry in their sleep. The night passed slowly, did not sleep. She rarely did during her shifts. Instead, she watched and listened and planned. This was what humans did. They prepared for dangers that might never come. Other species called it paranoia. Humans called it survival. When the lights brightened for the morning cycle, the cubs began to stir. Was first, as always. His golden eyes found immediately. "You stayed all night again," he said. His voice was young but trying to sound older. "I always stay," replied. The other cubs woke one by one, stretched her small legs. Bren yawned wide enough to show all his tiny teeth, simply opened her eyes and was instantly alert. "Is it game time?" Bren asked. His tail wagged with excitement. Smiled after breakfast. The cubs ate quickly. They always did when games were promised. Other caretakers on the station gave the refugee children toys and stories and lessons about galactic history. Gave them games, but her games were different. "Today we practice the diamond," said when breakfast was finished. The cubs scrambled into position, took the back watching behind, took the right side. Bren took the left, and stood in the center surrounded and protected. "Good," said. "Now walk, stay together, keep your spacing." The cubs moved across the dormitory floor. Their steps were clumsy at first, but they corrected each other, moved too fast and chirped at him to slow down. Bren drifted too far left and nudged him back. They were learning. "Why do we walk this way?" Bren asked, still moving, still watching his position. "Because together is stronger than alone," said. "The diamond protects. If danger comes from any side, someone sees it first. Someone can warn the others." "What danger?" asked. Paused. How much truth should she give to children? She chose her words carefully. "The universe has dangers, you know this. But if you stay together, if you watch for each other, the danger becomes smaller. This is what my people learned on Earth." "Earth is a dangerous place," asked from the back of the formation. "Earth is a death world," said simply. "Everything there wants to kill you. The animals, the weather, the plants. Even the water can kill if you don't know how to survive it. Humans learned very young that the only way to live was to work together and always be ready." The cubs were silent for a moment. Then Bren spoke. "But you're not scary at all, you're nice." Smiled, but there was something sad in it. Humans are very good at being nice. We're also very good at other things. Now, let's practice the silent signals. She taught them hand signs. A closed fist meant stop. A flat palm meant get down. Two fingers pointing meant danger in that direction. A thumb up meant safe. The cubs learned quickly. For them, it was a game, for it was something else entirely. Elder arrived at midday. He was old for his silver-blue fur faded to gray around his muzzle. He walked with a slight limp from an injury that never healed right. He was the Cubs' official guardian appointed by the Galactic Union, but he could not protect them. Not really. He was too old, too slow, too damaged by the same war that had orphaned them. He watched drilling the Cubs in formation movements. His expression was unreadable. "Human," he said finally, "why do you teach them this?" "Teach them what?" "War games, military movements. They are children." Straightened and faced him. "On Earth, we teach our young to survive before we teach them to dream. These Cubs have already seen war. They have already lost everything. I am teaching them to never lose again." Was quiet for a long moment. "The Union provides security. There are protocols." "Protocols didn't save there," said. There was no anger in her voice, only truth. "Protocols didn't save their parents. When they came, your protocols meant nothing." The old flinched. She knew her words were harsh, but harsh words were kinder than gentle lies. "I mean no disrespect," added, softer now, "but I will not let these Cubs be helpless, not while I breathe." That evening, station security officer Sung stopped by the dormitory. He was Korean-like, a former soldier-like, and the only other human on this section of the station. "Heard you scared old today," he said, leaning against the doorframe. I told him the truth. "Same thing sometimes." Sung watched the Cubs playing in the corner. They were practicing hand signals, turning her lessons into their own secret language. "Command got intelligence today. Raider activity in the sector." His body went still. Only someone who knew her would notice the change. How close? 3 systems away. Could be nothing, could be scouting. "What's Commander doing about it?" Sung snorted. "Increased patrol rotations. Filed reports with Union headquarters. Standard protocol responses." "So nothing useful." "Nothing useful," he agreed. That night, after the Cubs were asleep, sat in her chair and planned. She memorized the locations of every emergency exit. She counted the steps from the dormitory to the escape pods. She noted which maintenance tunnels could hide small bodies and which doors could be sealed from inside. Woke once, golden eyes blinking in the darkness. "Why are you still awake?" She looked at him. This small creature who had lost his whole world, who tried so hard to be brave for the younger Cubs, who had no idea how cruel the universe could be. "Because I like knowing where to run," she said softly, "and where to fight." Tilted his head. "Will we have to fight?" Reached out and gently touched his fur. "Not if I can help it. Now sleep. Tomorrow we learn something new." The Cub curled back into the pile with his siblings. Within moments, his breathing slowed. Did not sleep. She watched the door and listened to the silence and prepared for a danger that everyone else believed would never come. 3 days passed after Sung brought the news about activity. On the surface, nothing changed on Station Horizon 7. The refugees went about their routines. The markets opened and closed. The children played in the common areas, but felt something wrong in the air. Something that made the hair on her arms stand up and her heart beat just a little faster. It started with small things. A communication blackout that lasted 6 hours. The station managers blamed old equipment. A patrol ship arrived 4 hours late from its route. The pilot blamed navigation errors. Supply shipments got delayed. Bureaucratic problems, they said. But knew better. She had seen these patterns before. On Earth, in war zones, the small breakdowns always came first. The enemy tested defenses. They probed for weaknesses. They watched and waited and learned. And then they struck. She said nothing to the Cubs about her fears. They were children. They deserved to feel safe, even if safety was an illusion. But she changed their training. "New game today," she told them one morning. "It's called Shadow Walk." "What's Shadow Walk?" Bren asked, his ears perked forward with curiosity. "Watch me." moved across the room, but she didn't walk normally. She stepped only on the spots where the floor didn't creak. She kept close to the walls where shadows gathered. She made no sound at all. "Your turn," she said. The cubs tried, was too heavy on his feet at first, was naturally quiet but moved too slowly. Bryn couldn't stop his claws from clicking on the metal, but watched and learned and soon moved like smoke through the room. "Why do we need to be quiet?" asked after an hour of practice. "Sometimes being quiet keeps you alive," said. "Sometimes the best way to survive is to not be seen or heard. The prey that makes noise is the prey that gets caught." "We're not prey," said firmly. His small chest puffed out with pride. Looked at him with gentle eyes. "Everything is prey to something, little one. Even humans, even the difference is knowing when to hide and when to fight." That afternoon found Sung in the security office. He was staring at screens filled with data and reports. His face looked tired. "More bad news?" she asked. 3 more communication blackouts in the outer ring. 2 cargo ships changed their routes to avoid our sector, and someone accessed the station's defense grid last night from an unauthorized terminal. Inside job. Maybe, says it was probably a glitch. Felt cold anger rise in her chest. Is a fool. Is our commander, Sung said, but he didn't disagree with her. They spent the next 2 hours doing what the station's official security should have been doing. They mapped escape routes. They identified which sections of the station had weak points in their hull. They noted where weapons might be hidden or improvised. They made plans that no one asked them to make. "If they hit the station, they'll target the refugee sections first," Sung said. "Slaves are valuable cargo, especially young ones." His hands clenched into fists. "They won't touch those cubs." "I know." Sung pulled up a map of the maintenance tunnels. "These routes lead from the dormitory section to the emergency shelters in the core. They're small, too small for, but the cubs could fit. I need copies of these maps." "Already sent to your pad." Nodded. This was why she trusted Sung. He understood without needing explanations. He prepared without needing orders. He was human. When she returned to the dormitory, the cubs were waiting. They had been practicing the hand signals without her. Stood in front, correcting the others when they made mistakes. "Good," said. "You're learning." Said, her golden eyes were serious. "Something is wrong, isn't it?" The other cubs stopped and looked at her. Even Little, who usually avoided scary things, was watching and waiting. Knelt down to their level. "What makes you say that?" "You've been different. You check the doors more, you sleep less. You're teaching us harder games," tilted her head. "My mother used to get like that, before the bad things came." The words hit like a punch to the stomach. These cubs had already lived through one disaster. They knew the signs. They remembered. She couldn't lie to them. "Something might be wrong," she admitted. "I'm not sure yet, but I want you to be ready just in case." "Ready for what?" asked. His voice was trying to be brave but heard the fear underneath. "Ready for anything." She put her hands on her knees and looked at each of them in turn. "Listen to me. If I ever tell you to run, you run. If I tell you to hide, you hide. If I tell you to stay close, you stay so close that I can feel you breathing. Do you understand?" The cubs nodded. "But why?" whispered. Her voice was tiny and scared. Picked up the smallest cub and held her close. "Because I made a promise to myself. No one will hurt you while I'm alive. No one will take you. No one will make you feel the fear you felt before. But for me to keep that promise, you have to trust me completely. Can you do that?" Buried her face and shoulder. "Yes." "Me too," Bren said. "Me too," added. Stepped forward. For a moment he looked older than his years. "We trust you. We'll do whatever you say." That evening, Elder came to the dormitory again. But this time, his expression was different. The doubt was gone. In its place was something that looked like fear. "Human," he said quietly, making sure the cubs couldn't hear. "I spoke with other elders today. Some of them have contacts in the outer sectors. They're hearing rumors. What kind of rumors? Raiders, a large group, moving toward this region of space. His old hands trembled slightly. The Union says there's nothing to worry about. They say the station is safe. But you don't believe them. The old closed his eyes. I believed them once before, when they said I was safe, when they said the defensive fleet would protect us. I watched my world burn from an escape pod while Union ships arrived too late. Put a hand on his thin shoulder, then help me. Help you how? Tell the other refugees to prepare, quietly. Don't cause panic, but make sure they know the escape routes. Make sure they have emergency supplies. Make sure they understand that if something happens, they need to move fast and not wait for orders. Nodded slowly. The Union won't like this. Commander will say we're causing fear. Fear keeps people alive, said. Comfort gets them killed. That night, after everyone was asleep, called Commander to a meeting. The station's commander was a tall creature with 4 arms and compound eyes that showed no emotion. He listened to her concerns with obvious impatience. The communication problems have been fixed, he said. The patrol delays were minor. The intelligence about activity is being monitored. There is no reason for alarm. There's every reason for alarm, replied. The patterns suggest. You are a caretaker, interrupted. Not a security expert, not a military commander, a caretaker. Your job is to watch children and change bedding. Leave security to those who understand it. Felt her temper rise but controlled it. When they come, your protocols won't save anyone. I will. His compound eyes glittered. That sounded like a threat. It sounded like a promise. Turned and walked away before she said something that would get her arrested. She returned to the dormitory and found Sung waiting. He had supplies with him. Water, food packs, medical kits, emergency lights. I hid more in the maintenance tunnels, he said. Enough for you and the cubs for 3 days. Thank you. Don't thank me. He headed for the door. Just keep those kids alive. Stored the supplies in hidden spots around the dormitory, under floor panels, behind wall vents, places the cubs could reach quickly. Then she sat in her chair and watched the door. The station was quiet. The cubs were sleeping. Everything seemed peaceful. But knew that peace was just the calm before the storm, and the storm was coming. The attack came during the deepest part of the night cycle. Was sitting in her chair when she felt it. Not a sound, not a sight, just a feeling. The hair on her arms stood up. Her heart started to beat faster. Every instinct she had screamed that something was wrong. She stood slowly and moved to the door. The corridor outside was dark and quiet, too quiet. The soft hum of the station's power systems had changed. It was lower now, weaker. Someone had done something to the main grid. Then the lights went out completely. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in dim red. In the dormitory, the cubs stirred and whimpered. They could feel it too. Fear was in the air like a smell. Moved fast. She went to each cub and shook them awake gently but firmly. Wake up, don't make noise, get dressed now. The cubs obeyed. They had practiced this. They didn't ask questions, they didn't cry, they just moved. Helped with her outer wrap. Checked that everyone had their emergency pouches. Bren watched the door with wide, frightened eyes. What's happening? Whispered. Before could answer, she heard it. Gunfire, distant but real, screams followed, then more gunfire closer now. They are here, she said simply. We're leaving. Diamond formation in the center, stay close to me, do not make a sound. The cubs assembled exactly as they had practiced 100 times. At the back, on the right, Bren on the left, protected in the middle. Their small bodies trembled with fear, but their formation was perfect. Grabbed her bag of supplies and a metal rod she had hidden under her mattress. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was something. Then she opened the door. The corridor was chaos. Refugees were running in all directions, screaming. Some fell and didn't get up. In the distance, saw shapes moving. Raiders. They were tall and covered in dark scales. Their eyes glowed red in the emergency lighting. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. And they were hunting. This way, breathed. She turned away from the main corridor and headed for a smaller passage. The maintenance tunnels were 50 meters away. They just had to reach them. The cubs followed in perfect silence. Their small feet made almost no sound. The shadow walk training was keeping them alive. They passed bodies, tried to block the cubs' view, but she couldn't block everything. Bren made a small choking sound when he saw a fallen refugee, grabbed his paw and kept him moving. 20 meters to the tunnel entrance. A raider turned the corner ahead of them. The cubs froze behind her. The raider was alone, separated from its group. It hadn't seen them yet. It was checking bodies on the ground, looking for living prey. Gave the hand signal, flat palm, get down. The cubs dropped to the floor instantly, pressing against the wall in the deepest shadow. Pressed herself beside them, barely breathing. The moved closer. Its nostrils flared as it sniffed the air. These creatures hunted partly by smell. They could detect fear. They could detect the heat of living bodies. His mind raced. If it found them, she would have to fight. She could probably kill one alone, but the noise would bring others. They would be trapped. The paused, its head turned toward their hiding spot. Red eyes scanned the shadows. His hand tightened on the metal rod. Behind her she felt trembling, but the little cub made no sound. None of them did. For 3 endless seconds, they stared at their hiding spot. Then a scream came from somewhere else in the station. This head snapped toward the sound. Fresh prey, easier prey. It ran toward the scream, leaving and the cubs in darkness. Move, whispered. They reached the maintenance tunnel entrance. The door was small, designed for repair workers and their equipment. The cubs could fit easily, would have to crawl. Inside, quickly, lead them. Follow the path I showed you. What about you? Asked. I'm right behind you. Go. The cubs climbed into the tunnel. First, then Bren, then. Followed last, pulling the door shut behind her. The tunnel was dark and cramped. The metal walls pressed close on all sides, but it was safe. They couldn't fit in here. For now, they were hidden. Keep moving, said. Don't stop until I tell you. They crawled through the darkness. The sounds of the attack faded behind them. Gunfire became distant thunder. Screams became whispers. The station was dying around them, but they were still alive. After what felt like hours, they reached a junction point. Sung had marked this spot with a small symbol that only humans would recognize. Here, they could rest briefly. Is everyone okay? Asked, checking each cub. I'm scared, admitted. Her small voice echoed in the tunnel. Being scared is okay, said. Being scared keeps you careful, but you're doing so well, all of you. I'm proud of you. Where are we going? Asked. The emergency shelters in the station core. They're designed to survive anything. We'll be safe there. What about the others? Bren asked. The other refugees. Was quiet for a moment. She didn't know how to answer. She couldn't save everyone. She could only save these 4. Sung is helping them, she said finally. He and others are fighting. They'll get as many people to safety as they can. It wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was that many people were already dead. Many more would die before this night ended, but the cubs didn't need to know that. Not yet. We need to keep moving, said. The shelter is still far away. They crawled deeper into the maintenance tunnels. At one point, they heard voices above them, muffled by the metal walls. The cubs froze until the voices passed. At another point, they had to cross an open junction that was lit by emergency lights. Went first, checked that it was clear, and then signaled for the cubs to follow one at a time. They were halfway to the shelter when smelled smoke. Fire, she said. They're burning sections of the station. Will the fire reach us? Asked. Not in the tunnels, but we need to move faster. The smoke could spread. They increased their pace. The cubs were tired. Their small legs ached from crawling, but they didn't complain. They just kept moving, trusting to lead them to safety. Then they reached a section of tunnel that was blocked. Metal debris filled the passage. Part of the ceiling had collapsed, probably from an explosion above. There was no way through. "We have to go back," said, "find another route." They backtracked to the last junction, consulted her map in the dim light. There was another path, but it was longer and would take them through a section that connected to the main corridors. "Stay close," she told the cubs. "This part might be dangerous." They moved through the new route. It was wider here, almost wide enough for to stand. That meant it might be wide enough for other things too. The tunnel opened into a service room. Emergency lights cast everything in red. Beyond the room was a door to the main corridor. Crept to the door and listened. She heard nothing. Slowly she opened it. The corridor outside was empty. Bodies lay on the floor, but nothing moved. They had passed through here already and moved on. "We need to cross," whispered. "One at a time, fast and quiet, you first, straight across to the tunnel on the other side." Nodded. She darted across the corridor like a silver ghost and disappeared into the opposite tunnel. "Bren, go." Bren followed, then. Went last. She was almost across when she heard the sound. Heavy footsteps getting closer. She dove into the tunnel just as a patrol turned the corner behind her. She pressed herself against the wall and held her breath. The patrol stopped. One of them made a sound. Had they seen her? Had they heard? Long seconds passed. Then the patrol moved on, continuing down the corridor. Exhaled slowly. The cubs were watching her with huge golden eyes. "That was close," she whispered. "Too close," agreed. They kept moving. The shelter was near now. Just a few more sections, just a little further. Could feel the exhaustion in her own body. She had been awake for over 20 hours. Her muscles ached. Her eyes burned. But she couldn't stop. Not until the cubs were safe. Not until the cubs were safe. Finally, they reached the last tunnel section. Ahead, she could see the heavy door of the emergency shelter. Safety, protection, the end of this nightmare. But between them and the door was another corridor crossing. And she could hear voices on the other side. Voices. Many of them. They had set up some kind of checkpoint. Could see lights and movement through a small gap in the wall. They were checking everyone who tried to pass. Those who had value were taken. Those who didn't were killed. There was no way around. No other route. The only path to the shelter was through that corridor. Looked at the cubs. They looked back at her with complete trust. She took a deep breath. "Stay close to me," she said. "No matter what happens, stay close." Counted at the checkpoint. 7, all armed, all large. They stood in the corridor between her cubs and safety. Behind the checkpoint she could see other refugees being held. Some were crying. Some were silent with terror. None of them were fighting. No one ever fought that was what the galaxy believed. They were too big, too strong, too cruel. Fighting them meant death. So people surrendered and prayed for mercy that never came. But was human, and humans came from Earth, a planet where everything tried to kill them since the moment they climbed down from the trees. Humans had fought and killed things bigger, stronger, and more numerous than themselves for 1,000,000 years. It was in their blood. It was in their bones. She looked at the checkpoint again. 7, heavy weapons, strong armor on their chests but lighter protection on their limbs. They were confident. Why wouldn't they be? They had never faced anything that fought back. Made her decision. "Cubs," she said quietly, "listen to me very carefully." 4 pairs of golden eyes fixed on her face. In the dim red light she could see their fear, but she could also see their trust. They believed in her. They would do whatever she asked. "When I move forward, you will follow me. Not behind me, with me. Do you understand? We move together, we stay together, we survive together. But Bren whispered, there are so many. I know, put her hand on his small head, but I made you a promise. No one will hurt you while I am alive. I meant it. What are you going to do? Asked. His voice was shaking, but he stood straight and tried to look brave. I'm going to show them what humans are, said. And you're going to show them what my cubs are. We walk through that checkpoint together. Formation tight, steps together. No matter what happens, you do not run. You do not hide. You stay with me. We're just cubs, said. Her voice was tiny. We can't fight. Knelt and cupped face in her hands. You don't have to fight, you just have to be brave. Can you do that for me? Can you be brave one more time? His golden eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Stood, she picked up her metal rod. It felt light in her hands. Not much of a weapon against 7 armored raiders, but it would have to be enough. Diamond formation, she said. Rear guard, right, Bren, left, center. When I step forward, you step forward. When I stop, you stop. We move as one. The cubs assembled behind her. Their small bodies pressed close together. Their formation was perfect. Took a deep breath. Then she stepped out of the tunnel and into the corridor. They saw her immediately. 7 pairs of red eyes turned toward the small human female walking toward them. For a moment, they just stared. They were not used to prey walking directly at them. Then one of them laughed. It was an ugly sound like rocks grinding together. Look, it said in the common trade language. A human and little animals walking right into our arms. The other laughed too. They raised their weapons but casually. They didn't see a threat. They saw easy prey. Stop there, human, the leader said. Drop your stick. Get on your knees. Maybe we let you live. Kept walking. Her steps were slow and steady. Behind her, 8 small feet matched her rhythm exactly. Step, step, step. The sound echoed in the corridor. They stopped laughing. Something was wrong. They could feel it. The human wasn't running, wasn't begging, wasn't crying. She was walking toward them like she owned the corridor, like they were in her way instead of the other way around. And the cubs, the little fox things, they weren't scattered or panicking. They were marching in formation, a perfect diamond pattern. Their eyes were forward. Their steps were synchronized. They looked like tiny soldiers. I said stop. The leader raised his weapon. Stop or die. Stopped 10 meters from the checkpoint. The cubs stopped with her, formation perfect, not a single step out of place. She really looked at them. She saw their weapons and their armor and their size. She also saw their confusion, their uncertainty. They had never seen anything like this before. Do you know what humans are? Asked. Her voice was calm, almost friendly. The leader growled. Weak things, soft things, no claws, no armor, nothing. That's what everyone thinks. Shifted her grip on the metal rod. They think humans are harmless because we smile and trade and build things instead of fight. They forget that we built everything we have on a world that tried to kill us every day. They forget that we ate monsters for breakfast and tamed the animals that hunted us for sport. They forget that we are the most dangerous thing to ever climb out of the water and walk on land. Words, they sneered, just words. Yes, agreed. Let me show you something other than words. She moved. They were fast, but was faster. Not because humans had quicker reflexes. They didn't. But because she had already decided what to do before she started moving. They had to think, to react, to process. Had already processed everything. She went for the leader first. Her metal rod cracked against his weapon arm before he could aim. Bone broke. The weapon fell, caught it before it hit the ground and turned it on the next raider. 2 shots, 2 fell. The remaining 4 charged her. That was a mistake. It meant they had stopped watching the corridor. It meant they had forgotten the cubs. Down, shouted. The cubs dropped flat instantly, pressing against the floor. Met the charging with nothing but the metal rod and a stolen weapon. She moved like water flowing around their attacks. She was smaller than them, which meant she was faster, harder to hit. Every strike she made was precise. Throat, eyes, joints, the weak points that armor didn't cover. One fell, clutching his throat. Another stumbled back with blood running from his eyes. The third tried to grab, but she ducked under his arms and drove her rod into his knee. He collapsed with a scream. The last standing looked at his fallen comrades. Then he looked at the human female. She was breathing hard. Blood covered her arms, but it wasn't her blood. Her eyes were cold and empty like a shark's eyes, like a predator's eyes. He turned and ran. Let him go, she had made her point. Cubs, she said, up, we're moving. The cubs rose from the floor. Their eyes were wide. They had just watched their gentle caretaker become something else entirely. They had watched her kill and wound with brutal efficiency. They should have been horrified. Instead, eyes shone with something like wonder. You're amazing, he breathed. I'm human, said simply. Now move, more will come. They ran through the checkpoint. The held refugees stared as they passed. They had seen the whole thing. One human female against 7 raiders. It should have been impossible. The emergency shelter door was ahead, punched in the code Sung had given her. The door hissed open. Inside, all of you, go. The cubs ran into the shelter, followed and sealed the door behind them. Inside, the shelter was small but well supplied. Air recyclers hummed on the ceiling. Emergency rations lined the walls. A medical kit hung by the door. They were safe. Leaned against the wall and let herself breathe. Her hands were shaking now. The fight had taken everything she had, but the cubs were alive. They were safe. His voice was quiet. Your arm. Looked down. There was a cut on her arm. One of them had grazed her with a blade. She hadn't even felt it during the fight. It's nothing, she said, just a scratch. But was already bringing the medical kit, helped her open it. Bren found the cleaning supplies, brought bandages. They worked together, the 4 cubs, treating her wound with careful pause. Their movements were clumsy but gentle. Their eyes were serious and focused. We're taking care of you now, said softly, like you took care of us. Felt something warm in her chest. These 4 small creatures, these orphans who had lost everything, they were still capable of this, of kindness, of love. Thank you, she whispered. The cubs finished bandaging her arm. Then one by one they curled up against her, on one side, on the other. Bren and in her lap. They pressed close, seeking warmth and comfort and safety. Said sleepily, the who ran away, he'll tell the others about you. Probably. What will they do? Thought about it. They'll be afraid. For the first time in their lives, they'll understand that some prey fights back, and sometimes the prey wins. Good, murmured, let them be afraid. Outside the shelter could hear distant sounds. Gunfire, explosions. The battle for the station was still raging. But in here, in this small metal room, 4 cubs slept against her body, trusting her completely. She stayed awake. She watched the door. She waited. And she was ready for whatever came next. The rescue ships arrived 12 hours later. Heard them first. The deep rumble of military engines cutting through space. The sharp crackle of heavy weapons firing. Then voices on the emergency channel, speaking in the crisp tones of Galactic Union soldiers. Attention Station Horizon 7. Union forces have engaged hostile vessels. Ground teams are securing all sectors. If you can hear this message, stay in your shelter. Help is coming. The cubs woke at the sound. Their ears perked up. Their eyes filled with hope. Is it over? Bren asked. Almost, said. Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone except me. She cracked the door and looked outside. The corridor was empty now. The bodies had been moved. The blood remained. A squad of Union soldiers came around the corner. They wore heavy armor and carried big guns. Their leader, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 eyes, stopped when he saw. Human female, he said, are you injured? Minor cuts, nothing serious. I have 4 cubs in the shelter. They're unharmed. The soldier's 4 eyes blinked. You survived the night with 4 children. I did. He looked at the checkpoint area behind her. The bodies of the she had killed were still there. Investigators were already examining them, taking pictures, recording data. Did you do that? The soldier asked. Met his eyes. They were between my cubs and safety. The soldier was quiet for a long moment. Then he stepped aside and spoke into his communicator. Medical team to Emergency Shelter 7. We have survivors. Human female and 4 cubs, all alive. The word spread quickly through the rescue teams. All alive. In a station where hundreds had died, one human female had kept 4 children alive through the entire night, and she had killed 7 raiders to do it. Medical teams arrived and checked the cubs. They were tired and scared but physically unharmed, had protected them completely. Elder found them an hour later. The old pushed through the crowds of rescuers and refugees until he reached the shelter. When he saw the cubs, he fell to his knees. You're alive, he gasped. You're all alive. The cubs ran to him, chirping and crying. They pressed against his old body, and he wrapped his arms around them as best he could. Then he looked up tears ran down his gray fur. Human, he said, his voice broke. I don't have words. I don't have enough words for what you did. You don't need words, said. They're safe, that's enough. Sung found her next. He was wounded. A bandage covered half his face and he walked with a limp, but he was alive. You made it, he said. So did you. Barely. He looked at the cubs who were still clinging to Elder. Heard you fought through a checkpoint. 7. Sung shook his head slowly. You know they're going to write reports about this, studies. They'll want to know how one human did that. I did what any human would do, said. I protected my family. The next few days were chaos. Investigators came. Officers came. Reporters came. Everyone wanted to talk to the human who had fought 7 alone and won. Everyone wanted to understand how this was possible. Commander faced a tribunal. The evidence was clear. His failure to respond to warnings had cost hundreds of lives. His dismissal of human concerns had been proven wrong in the worst possible way. He was removed from command and sent away in disgrace. Refused to testify against him. When asked why, she said, blame doesn't save lives, training does. Let him go. Just make sure the next commander listens when humans talk. The corridor where she had fought became something of a landmark. Union investigators measured everything. They recorded the position of every body, every blood stain, every mark on the walls. The final report was classified at the highest level. It was too disturbing for public release. But rumors spread anyway. 1 human, 7, 4 cubs protected. Other refugee stations began requesting human caretakers, human guards, human teachers. The species that everyone had dismissed as weak and soft suddenly became very valuable. Stayed with the cubs through it all. She stayed when the reporters came. She stayed when the officers came. She stayed when the cubs woke screaming from nightmares about red eyes and gunfire. Elder performed an old ceremony 2 weeks after the attack. It was a bonding ritual, usually reserved for family. He stood before with the 4 cubs at his side. By the old ways of my people, he said, I name you family. You are not just our protector. You are our kin. Where our blood goes, you belong. Where our children go, you are welcome. From this day until the stars die, you are. The cubs pressed against legs, looked up at her with shining eyes. You're our family now, he said, really and truly. Felt tears on her cheeks. She hadn't cried when she fought, though. She hadn't cried when she thought she might die, but this made her cry. I was always your family, she whispered, from the first day I met you. Months passed, the station was repaired, new refugees arrived, life continued. Still worked the night shift at the dormitory, but now there were more cubs, 12 of them from different species. They had heard about the human caretaker who fought monsters to protect children. They had asked to be placed in her care. She taught them all the same games she had taught the original four. The diamond formation, the shadow walk, the silent signals. The cubs thought it was play. But Bren and knew better. They helped teach the new cubs. They showed them the formations, the signals, the movements. They passed on what had taught them. One evening, watched from her chair as led the new cubs in a formation drill. The little ones stumbled and giggled, but they were learning. They were getting better. Sat beside, he was bigger now, almost an adolescent. His voice was deeper. His eyes were older. He said, "Will you teach the new ones everything, like you taught us?" "I'll teach them to survive," said, "and you'll help me." "Why me?" Looked at him, this cub who had been so scared, so lost. Now he stood straight and watched the exits and moved without making sound. He had learned. He had grown. "Because you're ready," she said. "Because one day you'll protect cubs of your own, and you'll teach them everything I taught you, and they'll teach the next generation. This is how humans have survived for 1,000,000 years. We pass on what we know. We prepare those who come after us." Was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. "I understand." Good smiled. "Now go help Bren. His left side is drifting again." Ran to join the drill. Watched him take his place in the formation. Watched him gently correct Bren's position. Watched him become a teacher himself. Across the galaxy, a new phrase entered the universal translator banks. It was Korean. There was no direct translation, but the meaning was understood by everyone who heard it. "Stay close. Be ready. I will die before they touch you." The cubs called it their word now, their promise to each other, their inheritance from the human who had taught them that survival was not about being the biggest or the strongest. It was about being prepared, about working together, about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Sat in her chair as the night cycle began. The cubs finished their drills and curled up in their beds. The station hummed with quiet life all around them. She didn't sleep. She watched the door. She listened to the silence. And somewhere in the universe, raiders told stories in frightened whispers about a human female who walked toward them instead of running away. About 4 small cubs who marched in formation like soldiers. About prey that fought back and won. They called her the Guardian, the monster who smiled, the Death World Mother. She called herself. And she was ready for anything.